All right, this is a little bit of a different episode tonight. We've got Laurie Watson with us, who's the host of Foreplay Radio Sex Therapist. I think I said that wrong.
Therapy.
She's a certified sex therapist and licensed marriage counselor. So Darren and I are going to get some help here in topics that we don't usually talk about on this show. Thanks for joining us, Laurie.
You're welcome. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it'll kind of be like a lesson for us. Both of us are in, I'm married, and Graham's in a
long-term relationship.
And
okay. How long have you been married?
I've been married, it will be 7 years this year that I've been married, but we went together 9 years.
Uh-huh. And how about you, Graham?
Oh, we had our 5th year anniversary 2 days ago.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I am here to answer questions and talk about sex. And, I think the scariest stat, I'll start with the scary stuff.
Sure.
Is that within 2 years of marriage or committed partnership, 30% of all couples are sexless or in low sex relationships. 30%.
Wow.
And we consider sexless to be less than 12 times a year.
Right, less than once a month, or 12 a year. Because you could have little spurts where you do it a few times and you take 6 months off. So
exactly. So that's a scary stat.
That is a scary stat. That gives me a little hope.
Yeah, Darren's already not in the 30%.
Yeah,
so.
I'm ahead of that curve.
Those odds, huh?
So that's a good start.
This is before children and before any kind of aging happens or menopause or anything. This is, I think it's all about a relationship dynamic that happens in coupleships.
Do you think that's a modern problem, or do you think that's something that's like, when do you think that's started? Like, do you think like all these problems are a modern day thing, or do you think like people 1,000 years ago what were sex lives like then, or was there these weird sort of like, because the other thing I want to get into a bit later is just the relationship side of things, which goes across just intimate relationships, right? Relationships are tough with everybody all the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, even the best ones.
So I think this is an eternal dynamic. And it's, maybe not 10,000 years ago, but certainly 1,000 years ago. And that's that people have two primary needs. They need to have autonomy, to direct themselves, to kind of be captain of their ship and have respect for their own decisions. But they also need love, closeness, sex, and intimacy. So it's this tension that we all feel between space, our need for space, and our need for closeness. When you think about it, right, when you're podcasting, you're not home with your family. When you're working, you're not home with your loved one. You're not on a date. But when you're with your family or your partner, you're not working, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
I think the modern issue is we're still working on our phones.
Yeah.
So it's a problem.
Yeah.
But I think that we personally make decisions about which one is more important when, right?
Yeah. So what happens at the 2 year mark then for that kind of thing? Like, why does that start to change then? Obviously it's apparent.
Change sex.
Or yeah, but why at that time frame, I wonder?
Yeah. So what happens is that by year 2, some of our facade wears off, and it turns out that one of us will kind of corner the market on one of those needs, and the other will corner the market on the other. So one person becomes what I call the pursuer, the chaser, and the other person is the distancer, the person who's avoidant. And the pursuer says, I want more time, I want to talk more, I want more sex perhaps, I want more closeness. And that, to the distancing partner, feels suffocating. It's like, ooh, I just need my own thing. I need my buddies. I need my hobbies. I need space. I need to, go off. I need to work. I need to do anything but be in relationship with you, because suddenly at about year 2, all the facades drop and this new element comes into play. When we're married or we're joined in partnership, it's already suffocating, right? Before we had separate places, separate money, separate everything. But when we're living together, suddenly same space. Sometimes we share money. Sometimes we share children. We're sharing life goals. That's already difficult. And then you add this dynamic in, and one person says, you don't give me enough. And the other person says, you don't give me a chance to give you anything. No matter what I do, it's not enough for you anyway. They back up further, which pulls the chaser toward them. And the chaser keeps saying, my needs are not getting met. And the distancer says, you're trying to control me. And this dynamic splits couples apart, and sex is strangled in that power struggle.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So do you think that the 70%, or let's even say that like there's probably a small percentage, like around 20 or 30, that are nowhere near that, like they're healthy in many ways. Yeah. So is there a commonality between them? Like, are they the same? They're neither of them are chaser or pursuers, or is there a level of trust and honesty that's not in the other relationships? Or
yes, absolutely. And it actually, we come, unfortunately, a bit predestined to how we're going to behave. And that comes from our childhood. And if we come from a childhood where we're secure, where our parents set decent boundaries, but they give us, enough room to grow, roots and wings, right? And they give us a sense that we're loved, there's affection, there's some stable economy and financial stability. Most of those kids come out of that without this need to overprotect themselves, or they're not too needy. And it turns out that most of the population does come from that kind of childhood, that they come from secure childhoods. And so they meet, marry other securely attached people, and they have this potential for a great deal more happiness. Whereas other people have come out of childhood without that. So on either end, I call them crying babies. And crying babies, they don't give a damn, right? Who comes to help them, just so long as somebody comes. And so when they're wet, tired, hungry, they start bawling and wailing, and somebody finally comes and picks them up. The avoidant, the good baby says, I don't like angry face. I will do anything to avoid angry face above my crib. So I will suffer wet, tired, hungry, so long as angry face doesn't come. And so they gurgle and coo and try to attract attention in that way. And then the parent maybe, comes and gives them attention. And the weirdest thing is that crying babies grow up to be insecurely attached adults who are pursuers. Good babies have this sensitivity. They become avoidant. And oftentimes avoidant people, they don't have their needs met hardly at all in childhood. This is the child who didn't get enough affection. And so they take this vow, this like inner vow that says, I'm just not going to need anymore, because it's so painful to me that my mother, my father, or my mother type, my father type person did not stroke me, hold me, cuddle me, that I'm not going to need that. And then they grow up in this adult romantic sexual relationship where there's plenty available to them, but they're like, nah, I don't need that. I don't want that. And that comes to bear at about year 2, because during the courtship and, the dating years, we're all, essentially putting our best foot forward. And that desire to catch and connect is so strong that we really do act differently than we do once we're settled in. And then, unfortunately, all the problems come to play in the relationship.
Yeah, once the honeymoon phase is over, really.
Right.
Do you call it the honeymoon phase still?
So no, I wouldn't say so. I don't think that sexual desire actually dies, that, we get bored. It's that we kill it, because to stay within that, to stay with sexual desire is so vulnerable. Like, oh my God, we say to our partner, I don't know what you guys say and don't say here, but like,
We
touch
say
me,
whatever you
give
want.
me an
Yeah.
orgasm. Okay. I want you to, make me feel good and all this. And that's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
So we retreat from that kind of vulnerability, and that helps sex die. Or we get frenetic. Oh my God, it's not going to be there. So the person doesn't actually operate from horny or from desire. They operate from a feeling that there won't be enough. Mm. And so they keep asking and asking and asking. And that pollutes the process that is natural, of both people feeling desire for each other. And it becomes overburdened by the ask.
And how much does the actual just like interrelational trouble of trying to, maintain that relationship and keep resentment out and, everything else that sort of piles up over those couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, the good news is at, these early years, if you get help early, you save yourself a myriad of problems later on, because they're, small problems take a small amount of work to resolve. If you let it build up, then we have a train wreck later on. But I mean, relationship is really difficult, right? There's all kinds of things we don't necessarily know instinctually. If we didn't come from a childhood where intimacy and romance was modeled, or we came from a childhood where nobody talked about anything, or maybe we came from something worse, right? Like alcoholism, abuse, anger, rage, economic insecurity. I mean, all of those things impact what we know about intimacy. That's our blueprint. And it's very, very hard to escape your blueprint without being conscious.
So is that the main part of your work with couples then, that they go through this, is that making sure that they're aware that all this in their past might have created problems in the future, and then you can start sort of reprogramming or rewiring the brain and sort of get out of those unhealthy reflexes in a way?
Yeah, exactly. And I particularly in my therapy work with something called attachment theory, which is the most well-researched scientific theory about how humans connect, and then how romantic couples connect and stay connected. And in the podcast, which is Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy, we teach about this, as well as we have a ton of fun. We talk about orgasms, and we talk about positions, and we just have fun with some practical sexual tips. But also, our main goal is to help people learn how to solve their sexual problems by themselves, by understanding there's a framework. And once you can see yourself in that framework, you can solve your own problems. You can know, okay, I'm a pursuer. What should I do? I'm a distancer. How do I fix that so that this dynamic that I've helped co-create with my partner doesn't keep us apart? I mean, couples fall into a toxic cycle, and that has a life of its own. It's not even their own fault at that point. They just are stuck. And we are trying to help them see their way out by learning a couple things. I mean, in therapy, of course, the first thing I want to point out to people is, who are you? Which side do you dominantly stay on? Are you the pursuer, the distancer? In heterosexual couples, often the female is the emotional pursuer, right? She wants closeness, talking, family time. And he's like, look at, I gotta earn a living. I gotta build my kingdom. Quit. I don't know how to talk feelings. I don't know how to make you happy like that. But he's often driven, because of his hormonal input of testosterone, to be the sexual pursuer. He pursues sexually. And that's often how men really feel love, is that, the body is their playground. They feel deep connection. They are biologically programmed to feel sex as an emotion as well. And I think women don't understand this sometimes. Women, all you want is sex. But that's not all he wants. He often wants deep connection with his partner. Yeah. It's not enough to, have a hole, or not enough to, just do it. Sometimes it might be enough if that's all you get, but most of the time it's like he really needs that to feel secure. It's like he wants to come home, and that's how he feels home-based the most. But, for whatever reason, then she's the sexual distancer. She's not as interested in bed. So they're at cross purposes.
Yeah, I feel the love the most with from support, like you were mentioning, like we're here doing the podcast and all that. I mean, we all have other, family things. And the one thing that's great about our relationship now is that Maria, my girlfriend, she's supportive of everything I do. Like I've never had that in a relationship before. Or if it's been there, it's been sort of fake. Like they'll say, yeah, go ahead and go out and do your thing. But then they resent you afterwards, or they'll hold it against you later. And she's very supportive, like, across the board, which that's where I feel love. But it's funny you mentioned talking and feelings and stuff, because like I try and be present with her. I feel like that's important. Like when I'm with her, like try and be present
sometimes, right?
And listening. But she says I don't talk a lot. Like I don't talk about, and I'm talking all day at work and through the show. And I guess for her, she feels like I don't say as much as I.
And it's hard because you got to try and do it without
I'm trying to ask her stuff, right? So I'm trying not to talk about myself, but maybe that's what she wants me to talk about myself more. So it's a weird thing. Like I thought I was being more tentative by not talking, but then she feels like I'm not sharing.
I've been trying to figure out it's too bad he's dead, because it would have been great to get on the show with Marshall Rosenberg stuff. But even after reading the books and going through the videos and stuff like that, it's still to use it in a practical way, especially when you really need it, which is when things are getting heated.
What is that stuff though?
It's like compassionate communication type stuff, but it's like trying to use that empathy, right? Using your words to dig out more feelings is kind of the trick to it. But I mean, I know it's like, it's fucking tough.
It is. It really is. And in some ways it seems like, Graham, you're giving so much in your work. You're using all your words up essentially, and maybe not necessarily saving something to share when you come home. Like a lot of people, and this is not only are men sometimes emotional distancing or just out of words. I have a girlfriend who says, I live my day. I don't really want to come home and talk about it again. That's like living it all over, but the reality is, it sounds like your partner is saying, I want to know you. Yeah, I want to know what excites you. I want to understand your day because you are so important to me. I want to get inside your head. And this is tough for us. Are there modern problems? Yes. There are modern problems, I think, that make it better, right? Who could beat sexting, But there are modern problems that make it worse, which is the invasion of our work life into our personal lives, and the ever-present call of every electronic, where it's squeezing out our one-on-one time with our families and loved ones. But, what I would say to you is, try to find some savory piece, some juicy piece to come home and tell her about.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
You know what a good trick is started doing, and you know what, I can't remember what book it was. It might have been Stan Tatton, or whatever his name is, but the trick was to like make her your go-to. When you get some good news or something like that, try and make it so that, like, that was just a little trick to get you started. Is whenever you get something and you want to tell someone right away, tell your significant other first, and make her that person all the time.
Yeah,
and
because that comes up sometimes where I think she feels like she's the last person one to know what's going on.
It's already on Twitter.
Yeah. Your Twitter base knows before she does.
Well, yeah. In Darren's case, I'm not on Twitter, but yeah, in Darren's case, it'd be.
Well, you're on Twitter more than you think.
What?
I take a picture.
He puts you there. Yeah. So, how about you, Darren? Which do you identify with one style or the other? By the way, your listeners, if they want, they can go to my website, which is Awaken. What? Oh my gosh, what am I?
I had you up here too. I can find it.
It'll be in the show notes for sure.
I have a fun radio call name, and of course now I can't remember it, but it's awakeningscenter.org, awakenings with an S center.org, or just Google Laurie Watson and you'll find me. But it's the love and sex quiz. And what this does is it identifies your style, both your sexual style, and your emotional style, to see if you're an emotional pursuer, distancer, sexual pursuer, distancer, and then it gives you kind of your next steps. Okay, if you're this pattern, how do you start to solve that toxic cycle so that the two of you can actually become more intimate? And it gives you kind of like, this is what you need to do. If you're an emotional pursuer, you definitely need to stop the criticism. You need to tone it down and contain your own anxiety. And if you're an emotional distancer, if you fall on that spectrum, and we're all somewhere in the spectrum, even if we're secure, we still kind of take one end or the other. So you can, Graham, you can be an emotional distancer, but still be securely attached. You're just you tend toward one direction, but the distancing side needs to learn to feed, nurture, and initiate. And same thing works with sex, right? If you're a sexual pursuer, you need to stop the criticism. It's like, don't get out of bed and say, well, that was good, but how could it be better? It's like that actually pressures the encounter. What you need to say is, that was good, period. That was great, period. Yeah. Don't, when can we do it again? Or, how do we make it better? It's just like, just stop with that. That was great.
Well, I mean, that comes back to just like something we come back to the show time and time again, is like being present and mindful and all that, right? I mean, it doesn't even have to be sex. It's like something as simple as going on a vacation to the wherever, and you spend the whole time staring at your phone and taking selfies and
exactly.
Forget to look at everything. I'll have to try those quizzes. I would guess that I probably fall into the generic stereotypes.
Yeah.
I've done the other ones. Like we just did one of those like intensive weekends in the mountains where it was one was the love languages.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that too.
Yeah, I did the 5 love languages. I did the 5 love languages one, and then we did the other one was like
that's Gary Chapman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the other one that went along with the love languages was. Which one's the love languages? That's one because I was like words of affirmation. The 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so mine was like words of affirmation was like 15 compared to the next one. So and then there was another one though that was like sensual, sexual, and shapeshifter and all that sort of stuff. I think I was a sensual. Right. But I'll try those. I mean, I'll print those quizzes out and we'll try those ones as well.
I think Maria and I did the love languages a few years back just for the hell of it. It wasn't like to improving. It's just I think she found the book and I was like, oh yeah, I've already tried that. Like I had tried it with my past relationship and we were opposite.
Oh, you never say that.
She's pretty good. She wants me to be honest about that. That's one of the things I can talk about my past stuff without her getting all irritated, which is cool. But we did it, and I think our top 3 were all the same. We were very, very close on the top 3. So that was pretty. It kind of made sense to me because it seemed to be the way we are with each other.
So it probably gives you more understanding because you kind of share those love languages.
Yeah.
It's just like another little tool. It just seems like you need 1,000 of those little tools to really take a good run at it, especially because, I mean, the other thing is it seems like expectation is probably a little different than it was even 20, 30, 40 years ago. Like, I mean,
that is true. That is very true, Darren.
Cute quote that's like happiness is reality minus expectation. And I feel like You know, in the age of, well, this is just it. You got Disney and you got movies and you got everything else. And now you've got a complete lack of any real, like, you know, who's talking. I mean, maybe it still happens. Maybe we're the exception to the rule, but I don't think so. There's not as much like wisdom being passed down from generationally, I don't think.
You guys did a show on that, didn't you, recently? I listened to your one on expectation. It was pretty good.
Yeah, we did. And I love that quote. That is awesome. I think that one of the things that has changed maybe by 2 generations that I've noticed is, first of all, the huge expectation of marrying a super attractive person, you know, or being with a super attractive person. It's almost like many things have funneled into who's the most attractive person I can be with, regardless of the variety of other characteristics that would make me happy. And then secondly, this idea that marriage should be best friend, hottest lover, you know, hardest worker, exceptional in every area, you know, whereas I think 2 generations ago, my grandparents, you know, some of who immigrated here, you know, they were looking for somebody who had a sense of humor, who would work hard, you know, who was fun to be with, you know, who was relatively attractive compared to all the other people in town, right? Not all the other people in the world, but all the other people in town that they felt attracted to. And I mean, that's such a different kind of expectation. I mean, my grandmother did not have glossy magazines to look at ever. She had never seen a movie. I mean, I'm 2 generations away from somebody who didn't have this inordinate pressure to be the most beautiful person in the world. I think men and women these days suffer terrible pressure, you know, to be uber attractive. And then just think about how that impacts their sex life. You know, I'm not good enough. I would say there's some central themes that really mute sexual desire, certainly especially for women, but it's growing for men. And that's, I'm not attractive enough. That's a mega problem for women. You know, they're just always self-evaluating, and that down regulates their experience of arousal. You know, not attractive enough. That's the big one. And I think, don't you think, guys, that there's more pressure for men too, to be uber fit, to be in shape, than there was maybe your father or your grandfather's generation?
Well, not only that, I think more than that, I think it's the materialism that's crept in. It's not that you have to look good and be in the best shape. I think more important, it's like you better have a smartphone and a decent vehicle. And, you know, if you want to go out for dinner or do anything besides just scrape by these days, I mean, you know, that everything seems to be, and I think maybe every generation says they've got it the worst, but, you know, it does seem like everyone's sort of in paycheck to paycheck mode these days. And it's like, but that being said, everyone's also got the newest phone and the newest computer and the newest gadget. And, you know, they're doing a hell of a job of marketing us.
Huge student loans.
Yeah. I mean, that's not helping either, right? They tricked everyone into student loans. And so there's the financial pressure, but I think more than anything, it's just the stuff with guys. I think that's where, you know, cars, gadgets.
Well, then you hear these studies where the women have been studied their attractiveness towards men, and they're most attracted to men in firefighter outfits and in Lamborghinis. Like, you can study that there's this huge attraction if you have a Lamborghini or if you're in like a firefighter outfit. So I mean,
right.
Guys are striving for it because it really does attract women. Apparently, you know.
Well, it's like hacking into those like weird little
survival
primal fucking things we have, right? Like, you know, you could see why a woman would want to have a guy that, especially in the past when it's a different world, right? When there's a protection element to it and there's food and I'm pregnant and I need to eat element to it. So the guy that's got a hut with some chow and a couple of cows is looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And that creeps in today into Lambos and firefighter outfits, I guess. I could at least get a firefighter outfit.
That you could do.
Yeah.
Try that.
They're on cheap after Halloween. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that there are pressures, and certainly gender, has a difference. I hear lots of young men, feeling that pressure of, well, I don't earn enough, so I'm not in the pool, and women who say, all they want is my good looks, and I'm not as pretty as the next girl who you can swipe right on or swipe left on. It's like somebody said to me, a woman who would be the belle of the ball at a cocktail party is bypassed by, 30 other women on an app, because she's not, there's always something better. And I think that, I have 3 sons, and I think that you're right in terms of the pressure that they feel to, earn a lot of money, to be attractive. It's not just for their own financial security, but it's to feel attractive.
Well, the richest couple on the planet just divorced, so.
There we go.
Yeah. But that doesn't seem to do it, right? I mean, you have all these rich people telling you over and over again that they're just as miserable as everyone else, but it just
sometimes more so.
Or the suicide rate among celebrities is higher, probably, if anything, compared to regular folks. So it's like, you have all those things telling you, but it's just not enough to beat it into your head that it's like money ain't gonna fix your shit. Do you think it's getting better? Because I mean, maybe it's just because I'm at that place in my life, but I do notice, because we've got another podcast we do called 13 Questions that's kind of aimed at personal growth for men. And I mean, we kind of started that going into something, figuring it wouldn't be a huge market, to be honest. And we kind of actually backed into it and found that there was all of a sudden a giant market for, no one was really talking about it. But as soon as you brought it up, everyone was direct messaging you. How do I get in? How do I get in? What are you talking about? And I mean, I noticed that right away when I started just sharing some books I was reading and stuff like that when I was having some relationship troubles. And that turned into a little book community, which is now spiraled into an online community and a podcast. And I'm continually surprised by the amount of just
people open to improving,
and
specifically men even talking about feelings and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people, I think, wanting to understand how they get secure outside of these other issues, right? The cultural pressures that say you should have, they want to know how they can be. How do I just be who I am and still feel secure? Like that is the dream. And I would say that this security is actually possible, that we call it, hard-won security. Because if you don't come out of a childhood where you feel that, and lots of us don't, there's a way to get that. And some of it is, doing some of the processing. Okay, this is where I came from. What we process, what we don't process is kind of like the iceberg. We know a few of our problems are the tips of the iceberg, but if we don't know what's underneath that and why we feel those things, then our relationships are in jeopardy. Ourselves are in jeopardy. We become frenetic, right? It's, I gotta have in order to feel secure. And like you've just noted, rich people don't necessarily feel secure. It's not about that. It's how do I be and feel secure in myself and develop the relationship that helps me feel secure and attached in this world, so that we're in it together. And that is something that is difficult, but I think the good news is it's entirely possible. And I guess in my work, while much of my therapy and certainly my podcast focuses around sex therapy, by and large, I'm dealing with people, both individually and with couples, who want to feel secure in the world. I want to feel like I belong and that somebody cares about me for who I am, not what I look like and not what I have.
Yeah.
who I am at the deepest core.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, it's funny because I used to think that like the crazy divorce rates, I don't know what they are, 50%, whatever they are these days. But I used to think, that's part of the disposable culture. And I don't think it is anymore. I don't think these people really want to get divorced. I think it's just that, it's that lack of connection. You see, like, it's coming out that addiction is, a lack of connection. It's looking like obesity might be a lack of connection. Like all these different things are a lack of connection. And that's what I think, the divorce rate is kind of like a warning signal that your most intimate relationships are falling apart. And once those start falling apart completely, it's just going to be a cascading effect because, I mean, where's the parent to child relationship at? Right. Because I don't know. I'm stuck thinking that if you can't figure out that one, what, do you think that works the opposite, or is it easier just to not have intimate relationships because you don't, it's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways.
Well, it's a solution, right? I mean, some people think if I just don't need an intimate relationship, then I'm protecting myself from ever getting hurt. There's only one problem with that, is that you live hurt. Your entire life is emptier and lonelier. And yes, we risk a lot when we love somebody. In fact, when we love somebody, we risk everything because every love relationship ends badly. Every single one. They could love someone else, they could stop loving us, or they'll die. Eventually, love ends and we face terrible loss. And so the more we love, the more we depend on somebody, the worse the ending is, right? The long marriage where we really get deeply connected has a terrible ending, because one partner often dies first. And so it's like we have to be willing to get vulnerable in order to have the treasures that life does offer, which to me, the deepest treasure is deep commitment and trust and connection with somebody who cares about me. I think sex is a form of that connection. It's a primitive, exhilarating form of this deep attachment. And not that you can't have sex in other ways. Certainly people do have sex in unconnected ways, mechanical ways, wooden ways, terrible ways. But I think within a relationship that is secure, it's kind of the very deepest form, the animal part of us, perhaps, that we connect there as well as by our souls and our emotions.
I wonder how that evolved, I guess. Like, what's your view on how our current, and I mean, let's just go with monogamy because I think that's probably the most prevalent one in society. Sure. How do you think, like, do you think that, because I mean, I'm a monogamist. I mean, I don't have enough, I shouldn't argue for anything. I'm not smart enough, but I mean, it makes sense to me. It makes sense, especially the older I get, I can see that, just being monogamous is better for a lot of things, and sex being one of them, where when you're younger, you think maybe multiple partners all of the time is a better thing, but then you're never going to get to that level 2, 3, 4, 5 with those people. And I don't know. I just feel like humans are sort of meant to have that. So what's your view on how we sort of evolved here? Do you think it's sort of ingrained in us to be monogamous, or do you think it's more we came from like the alpha male with the harem of women around him fighting for another harem and things like that? Or what's your take on that?
I think that, so this is really straight from attachment theory, is that, when a baby is born, it's a two-party system. The mother is engaged with the child, and the child is very engaged with the mother and engaging, oohing and eyeing and gurgling and trying to attract her attention because the baby's survival depends upon this attachment with its mother or its, father. But in the beginning, often it is mother who is more central to the baby. The baby doesn't really distinguish her as other or as separate from itself. It's one and the same. And there's this very symbiotic kind of experience that the child has. In some ways, it's this bubble of all my needs are taken care of by this thing, this it, this other, this person. And, it feels like paradise, right? I cry and I'm taken care of. And so I think that monogamy is essentially a desire to recreate that symbiosis, like somebody who, right, the fantasy, this is the fantasy and the heartbreak that knows my needs without being asked, just like it happened when I was an infant. And I don't mean to infantilize our relationships, but I think there's something, this longing to be, the baby doesn't know that mother has other children and other relationships and maybe a partner. The baby doesn't know that. The baby thinks it's the center of the mother's world. And so in monogamy, it's like this desire, I want to be the apple of somebody's eye, the center of their world, their one and only. I want to be the unique again. And that often it comes along with sexual fidelity, as an expression of how we experience that, in our bodies. So I think that it's that I believe that's how monogamy sort of came about, is this desire. And, I don't know about the caveman stuff. I wasn't there, but I think that, I hear a lot of arguments about this. Men want to sow their seed and women need to trap men to, help them raise the children. But I've often thought about this. It's like, if you were a cave woman, would you not sleep with every man you possibly could? Because that's how you get their support. And, why would you be monogamous if you were female as a cave woman? Why not spread it around, because now other men are attracted to you and wanting to help you. But I also think that the strength differential in our biology probably had something to play, the territorialism. But I think today, and I know that people choose other things, right? I'm not here to sell anybody on monogamy that doesn't want that. People make other choices and polyamory and stuff. They're trying to solve a problem. And I think that sometimes those create other problems that they're not, that also, they now have to solve. But monogamy has its difficulties, certainly to keep sex alive and exciting and have a stable relationship is quite a trick. It's a difficulty, and it requires so much attention and work. And people, especially about the sex life, believe, well, that just should happen naturally. I shouldn't have to work at this so much. It used to be so natural. And why do we have to work at this? Maybe we're not compatible because we have to work at this. And I don't think that's true. I think it's worthy of work. And it does take a lot of thoughtfulness and work in order to have it be exciting and life-giving, for the rest of our lives with someone.
That's interesting, because you hear people talk about how, back in the day, people just were stuck with it, or, the patriarchy or whatever, it was just, they were stuck with it. They didn't have, divorce wasn't an option. I'm going to go back to materialism. They also didn't have a TV and a cell phone and, watching swimsuit editions, or, what they did at night? They probably put the kids to bed and sat down and talked for an hour and a half. And then did the same thing when they woke up in the morning. So all of a sudden it's like that connection that you're talking about struggling with. There was nothing else to do. What else were you going to do when you got home from hunting or plowing the field or doing whatever? You haven't spent the day arguing over the price of steel or getting inundated with hits on your cell phone or whatever, you know what I mean? You just you spent that, there was no, just getting rid of the television can do wonders for your relationship. And I mean, I can't go as far as a cell phone, but I'd imagine like if you could go to the point where you didn't have a smartphone maybe again and just kind of eke back towards that, because I mean, it might have more to do with that than lack of options. It might have just been lack of distractions.
Mm-hmm. I think there was a difference. Absolutely. When people, talked until the candles burned down, right? And they had to go to bed because you don't want to burn 2 candles in one night. You just, now it's time for bed. I think that one of the things that was markedly different was the alternatives. Like you said, there wasn't television, there wasn't as much comparison, and I think that one of the ways we protect ourselves is we dilute our desire by imagining the other possibility. Well, I'm in touch with hundreds and thousands of images of people who are more attractive than my partner, and I can imagine that they would really understand me and they would be hotter in bed, and that kind of refocus, like with pornography and not just pornography, but Facebook and everything that says there's something better over here. We dilute and refocus on this thing that isn't even real, and so then we don't invest in the depth that makes our partner exciting again. We don't attune to them. And I think that Gottman, he's a researcher, a marriage researcher, you probably know that and talk about him. But, he says that desire is really about attunement. Like if you have lost desire for your partner, it's because you have not paid attention.
Yeah.
It's not about them not being sexy enough or paying you attention. It's that you have lost your focus. And that's why, you've gotten bored. Boredom is in the person. It's not in the other.
Yeah.
I'm bored because I haven't focused myself on my partner.
I was going to ask you a bit more about the porn aspect because I didn't make it all the way through your episode where you guys talked about that. But I got the sense that you were going to talk about some pros and some cons for that in relationships or,
sure.
Because I mean, it does seem to be that there's the same negative aspect, like the magazine, like the comparison to like a shiny magazine, and all the social media and the porn, it kind of adds it all together. But is there a positive aspect for couples in that as well?
Sure. I mean, porn is erotic, and I think that for people who need some erotic impulse, sure that can be a big turn on, and especially if they can use it maybe to start the game and then refocus onto their partner. I think the problem is it's hard to underestimate how seductive porn is in terms of the image, the ease of it, how false it is in terms of how people really make love. I mean, it's this, the porn partner is always available and always wanting, doesn't have any needs of their own. And, I know there's all kinds of porn out there these days, some really scary stuff and maybe some beautiful stuff. But I just think it's not realistic. There was an article, and I can't remember the author. I really apologize to this author, but it was in Psychology Today called 300 Vaginas Before Breakfast. It talked about how people, men particularly, when they use porn, it's not just using it to build excitement and masturbate and have an orgasm. It's often to build such high levels of excitement. And then your brain manufactures dopamine. And then they climax after this enormous sort of burst of dopamine and excitement, which is, it cannot be matched in an ordinary lovemaking session by anybody, no matter who she is, how beautiful she is, how much we love her. It just cannot be matched. And so they condition themselves for something that is, and then they are bored in their experience. There's some documentation about, potential leading to ED, because of too much porn use. And I really think it's this dopamine issue that perhaps they can't ejaculate or climax anymore because they're not, they don't have the same dopamine in the partner experience, but they do with porn. And so it's a really new influence. We won't probably know for another 30 years all of the pros and cons, but overall, I would say in couple relationships, it's fairly detrimental. Yeah. And it's not for a moral reason. I just think, it's so easy to avoid partner sex because partner sex is so freaking complicated and it's such a negotiation. And what I see is men who say, I don't have any sexual desire. And I ask them, what do you mean? Because they're still masturbating and watching porn. And they say, well, I don't want to negotiate it. Sometimes she's not in the mood or she's not a very exciting partner and it's like, I'd just rather be autonomous. And this is a sexually avoidant male, right? A sexual distancer. Doesn't mean he doesn't have desire. It just means he's going to take it into his own hands, literally. I don't want to deal with this, right? I don't want to deal with this in a partnership.
I got a question from the chats. From Willie Stubbs.
Hi, Willie Stubbs.
Actually, he listens to your show already. He says it's great and a lot of life-changing insight.
Wow.
Awesome.
And his question is, if you have any thoughts or insight on a new relationship and pursuing partners. Sounds like Willie is on the prowl.
Yeah. So, I think one thing we often are looking for in a new relationship is, will this be a sexually exciting partner for the rest of my life? If I'm looking for partnership, that's one thing. And again, I think, it's really hard to know. I remember when my boys were little, there was I'm going to date myself, but the Backstreet Boys, if you want it to be good girl, get yourself a bad boy, right? And I asked my kids, what do you think they're talking about? And they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm just singing it. And I said, well, they're talking about that if a girl wants it to be good, she needs to get herself a really experienced guy. And I said, I want to tell you in my work, what I've learned is that experience doesn't mean squat, that actually listening I didn't say these words to my kids, but attunement, like being able to be sensitive to your lover and to be concerned about them and mutually, right? That the woman is deeply attuned and concerned and offers mutuality in the sexual experience. That's really a better predictor of whether the sex will last than necessarily they had a bunch of experience or they're full of flash now. I really think it's about their sensitivity to you and your ability to be sensitive to somebody else. And that's the best predictor of long-time sex, because sex can be hot in the beginning. And once this conflict enters, sex can be killed. So you have to be with somebody who has a little bit of consciousness, wants to work on things, wants to think deeply, which sounds like you guys do. I mean, you're already investigating many psychological principles.
Oh, we investigate a lot of crazy stuff in Grimerica. Yeah. We don't limit it to that.
You don't discriminate on the psychological stuff. Huh?
How many, we talked
dimensions?
About. I was actually going to say.
Other stuff, yeah.
I can't remember what moment you mentioned something about how you're thinking about how that partner doesn't have any needs or how they'd be the perfect this or the perfect that. And it's got me thinking about simulation theory. And I'm always thinking that we live in a simulation because it just makes more sense than everything else. But, even if that's not true, everyone's living in their own simulation anyway. You know what I mean? You're running your fucking million simulations a day through your head.
Yeah.
It's really something else. We got another question from the chats.
Okay.
I won't say it's from Lena. How should we approach a partner with porn addiction?
Oh.
So, good one. I mean, I think first of all, you need to talk about your own needs. And porn addiction may mean he's not with you anymore, or it may mean, I feel threatened by you looking at this, or it may mean something worse, right? He's not going to work because he's looking at porn. I don't know the degree it is. And I would say that people throw around the term addiction pretty lightly. I probably have a more technical idea about that as a therapist than somebody who just looks at porn and wouldn't say they're an addict, whereas potentially their partner would. I think a true addict, somebody who's in trouble, using this instead of sleeping, not getting to work on time, maybe it's escalating to using escorts or prostitutes. I mean, this is deep stuff and needs to be, looked at, very, very closely, very, very quickly. I had a woman who came in who told me her husband upskirted, and that's where you put a phone in like a basket or something and try to see under women's skirts. And she said, he's only done it a couple times. I was like, oh my God, this is illegal. It will ruin you. There are cameras everywhere. I mean, are you kidding? And she denied this problem, whereas it sounds like this woman is aware of the problem. I think you need to speak up for yourself and say, I can't live with this. You're going to need help to break this, or tell him why. I want to be your one and only. This is too threatening to me. I would also have an expert, although I will say that experts are very divided on this, but somebody help you think about this. Is this, worth breaking the marriage up? Because I've had people who say, literally, my partner's an addict because he thought about using porn and it's not having used it. So there's a wide variety here. But I think somebody who is excessively using porn and not sleeping with you, that's a big problem.
I agree.
Get help.
Comes back to communication again, eh? Communication seems to be a big one.
Yeah.
That humans are bad at. That's another one that could be distractions, right? Like, it was probably easier to communicate when you spent most of your time having face-to-face conversations.
Yes.
Well, I suppose we won't keep you any longer. Laurie, you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I, again, would love to invite your listeners to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy, and I thank you for having me. This has been a really wonderful conversation.
Oh, that's good.
I'm delighted to have talked with you and to have learned some more about you and Grimerica. I'm really thrilled. I didn't know that you had the other podcast as well. I will definitely go and listen to that one too. I think that's exciting that you're trying to talk and have conversation with men. I think that's, if anything, I see some really, really nice men in my practice, and they're often so lonely, so isolated, not knowing, other men who are having deep conversations. So I'm kind of thrilled to know that you are doing that.
Yeah, we're trying to. Anyway, I know Adam's listening right now, so I'll make sure he sends you over all the info.
Okay.
Yeah, it's strange because we started talking about things we were interested in. That was the sort of the thing of our podcast, the concept. It was just stuff we're interested in, all these, ancient mysteries and crazy things. But what happened was we started to share people's stories and get into our own, try to be authentic and real. And then this community started to build around with a bunch of guys as well. I mean, and females, but I mean, the guys that we've met through this podcast, and we have a chat room, and like Darren was mentioning, guys started sort of creating a little book club. I mean, the love and the honesty and the depth of conversations we have with everybody is mind blowing. I mean, that's one of the best things that came out of this, was not only just talking to guests like yourself, but the people that now we're friends with, that you can talk to about all this deep stuff. Like, we can have really deep conversations with friends online or within this community that, you can't have a lot of with just people in everyday life. It seems like,
or getting the emails from people that that are just lazy ramblings or chatting with people, and it's just like it got me through a tough time, or it did this or it did that, and it's just now it becomes a responsibility. Now we just can't stop.
Yeah, that is really great. Well, I wish you guys a lot of luck, and I have been honored to be on this podcast.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, and good luck with your show. And
come back anytime. We got a bunch of people in the chat that said everyone was kind of nervous on how this one was going to go, but everyone says it went great. So another one. See, we can fit anything into this podcast.
Yeah.
Right on.
Okay, well, I'll have to come back.
Thanks,
you.
Laurie.
Thanks,
come back
Laurie.
anytime.
Okay.
Bye.
And that was our chat with Laurie Watson. What did you think? I expected some more personal questions from you, buddy. I thought you scheduled this to work on some stuff.
No. Honestly, I just I really like the show. Yeah. And I became a patron of the show.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right.
And so I remember what happened was I became a patron of the show. And when I did that, it emailed all of the Grimerica patrons.
That's hilarious.
All 88 of them or whatever.
And said, "Hey, guess who Grimerica's patroning now? The first one."
Yeah, and then I actually got a ton of interest in it, and people were listening to the show and everything else.
That's why they do that, I guess.
And I mean, it's not. And I'm actually just looking up right now because I don't want to get his name wrong. But it's not just Laurie either. It's
I was gonna mention that in the bio as well. Yeah, I thought that was a good show. I mean, it really makes sense. I don't know about
Adam Matthews.
Yeah,
Dr. Adam Matthews.
Yeah.
So they're great. I mean, the Gottman stuff's in there, and it's just, I mean, it's something I'm focused on right now. And when I supported their show, and they didn't have a lot of patrons, and I was just like, it's one of those times when it was like, let's try and use the platform to try and help, someone else get some more listeners that I think is doing important work.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those, I mean, I'm kind of one of those dudes I'll go find a podcast and whatever now these days. And I don't really have any shame when it comes to, or shame's not the right word, but I guess I'm not.
Reservations?
I don't have any reservations about talking about certain things or seeking help about certain things or telling people I'm doing it. So it just seemed like, let's get him on the show, and turned out to be a great chat.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask her about the King, Warrior, Magician. What is that one that...
King, Warrior, Magician, Lover?
Yeah, because she mentioned Kingdom, and I thought, but it's in reference to that. I was going to get her to go into a little bit more of that.
Yeah, that's part of it. We could do another show down the road.
Yeah, we should, because I mean, we'll have a bunch more questions. It's always good to get, and I'd like to ask some more personal questions. Maybe get our girlfriends in here.
Yeah,
or my girlfriend and your wife.
Well, you know what else would be good is to do one like that and open it up.
Open? What do you mean?
Fuck off.
What do you mean?
Open it up to the chats. So have it so people know ahead of time. I didn't think about that, but when you have a professional on, especially a professional that's got that's a therapist, that might be something that the audience might want to know about ahead of time.
Okay. So they ask their own questions, you mean?
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, it seemed like the porn question was pertinent to her, So people might listen to this and be like, fuck, man, I have some questions.
I see what you mean. So we should put a note in the chats and say, hey, we're having this person on. Send in your personal questions and we'll ask, or they can ask, or we can ask. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a little bit about other ways to diagnose or figure out how people are in those relationships, like the whole chaser,
pursuer, distancer. Yeah.
Like it seems like there's got to be other things. Like, what if you're the same? I guess that just, I guess that's okay. That's just.
No, I don't think it works like that.
I was going to ask her about sexual, what's the word? Like, let's say your needs are more than mine in a relationship. Like matching those sexual needs.
Keep talking.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. We should have kept going for a little while. I don't know, how long was that show for?
An hour.
Oh, it was like an hour already, eh? Well, that was great.
Time flies.
That was fun. And next time, maybe we'll have some more own personal questions about it. I tried to get a little personal there. But.
That was great. Good people generally enjoy how open and free you guys are, not trying to push an agenda. Actually, no, we had a few people in the chats that were worried about how it was going to go, but everyone seems to, we could interview anyone here. That's the beauty of not, remember we were going to do a paranormal show? Can you imagine if we were just stuck doing paranormal stuff week after?
Yeah,
I love me some paranormal stuff, but I would have fucking beat my head off the wall by now. It's just like, hey, we're doing our 87th Bigfoot show.
And that's not even paranormal.
Yeah.
Like for a lot of people, that's like a separate category.
We'd be getting hate mail on the Bigfoot shows.
This is supposed to be paranormal.
This is crypto, you fucks. All right, guys. Grimerica.ca/support. I don't think you could do a show like we do without having
without
direct listener support. I'm not even just talking about because of the content. I'm just talking about because of the advertisers would be like, they couldn't even.
No, they can't
demo.
They can't find a
demo you guys.
Right?
You guys are all over the fucking map.
Yeah, they're like, how are you supposed to sell to 15 to 25-year-olds when you're doing a sex therapist podcast?
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't be happy. So that's why you got to go to Grimerica.ca/support and keep supporting the show so that we don't get stuck being a paranormal podcast selling Squarespace ads, because that would fucking suck. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Grimerica.ca/support. Anything else?
That's about it.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. Bingo bango. What do we got left? 2 intros? I'd be at work and I got almost 2 hours.
Does it save it for Sunday or no?
We should do
Let's do the 13 questions one and wait. Or we did release an extra episode last week, so we could spread it out a little longer. Are we still live on YouTube?
We're still live on YouTube, yep.
We could spread out the next release a little longer because we had an extra one on, when was it, Sunday or Monday, Saturday? We did Thursday, Friday, Sunday.
Push it till Sunday?
Thursday, Sunday.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just push the show till Sunday.
And then we'll do 13 questions intro, and then we'll call it a night. And you can go to work.
Mind you, I got a bit of time.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's just do it. Let's get it done.
Okay.
I want to leave Sunday for black budget stuff.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop the thing and we'll be back in 10. We'll give you guys 10 minutes. We'll be back at 9 o'clock with the intro. 17 minutes.